From Evoke Media, I'm Sabrina Mirage Naeem. With me is Cassia Binkowski, and this is Breaking Glass, a series of conversations with women around the world who are shattering glass ceilings and challenging social norms. They are audacious, gutsy, and their stories are echoed across borders and generations in a rallying cry that is changing the narrative for women everywhere. Carol Fishman Cohen is an expert in helping mid-career professionals, the vast majority of whom are women, relaunch their careers after taking career breaks. Carol's story in this space starts more than 2 decades ago when she stepped out of a successful finance career to raise her children. More than 10 years later, she navigated the complex path, rebuilding her career, and ultimately pivoted to founding a company specifically focused on helping other individuals do the same.
Sabrina, while Carol's expertise relates to a much wider group of individuals who have stepped out of the workforce for any number of reasons, we're of course talking today about women. This decision to take a career break is emotionally fraught for so many of us, whether it's a choice that somebody has the privilege to think critically about, or if it's a decision that's being made for them. Carol has really good advice about how to navigate this, how to relieve some of that overwhelm. And her story and expertise are more relevant than ever due to COVID and the impact that the pandemic is having on the female workforce. Of course, we talk about that too. Take a listen.
Carol, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, hi, Sabrina. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to begin.
Great. So today we want to talk about a few areas that are, your areas of focus, but also kind of personal to you, your personal journey in relaunching your career after quite a long career break, and also what you've learned in terms of launching your company, iRelaunch, helping other people come back into the workplace after career breaks for a number of reasons, and why it's beneficial not just for these people to be more strategic about it, but also for the companies. And we're going to also have a pretty specific conversation around COVID and how COVID has been impacting women disproportionately in the workplace. But I want to be clear that we're not just talking about mothers here. Your expertise and path to reentering a workforce relates to any individual on a career break. It could be veterans, it could be elderly care, it could be parenting, it could be for health reasons. But today's focus, of course, is on women, the many reasons why we take career breaks, the ways in which we can relaunch our careers, why relaunchers benefit companies, and the disproportionate impact of COVID on female workers. So I want to start with you and your personal experience. You graduated from Pomona College with a degree in economics. You then went on to get your MBA from Harvard Business School, and then kind of dove in headfirst into a career in finance. And you were, I would say, elbow deep in that career when you took a step back to raise your 4 children, and you spent 11 years out of the workforce. So take us back to that season of your life when you felt ready to relaunch. What was that decision process like, and what were you most intimidated by?
Sure. So I want to give you just a little extra history there. Between college and business school, I worked for an investment firm. Then I went to business school. I worked in manufacturing for a brief stint right after, and then I went back into finance, but in corporate finance for an investment bank. And I was there for just about 3 years when the company I was looking for collapsed when I was on maternity leave with my first child. So I didn't have a company to return to, and that essentially began my career break. And it was in 1990, it was a long time ago. And I decided not to go looking for the next big job. And I had 3 more kids in close succession, and I was home with those kids. And I just didn't really think anything of it at that point. I just gradually went into my at-home mom role. And life went on. And it wasn't until I'd say around year 9 of when I was on my career break that I started to think about that I was getting ready to want to return. And this was 1999. So no one was talking about this whole idea of relaunching careers. I didn't know a single other person who had gone back to work. And so it was really new territory. I had no idea how I was going to do it. But I started thinking about it in year 9. And I ultimately returned to work 2 years later in 2001, working for an investment firm as a financial analyst again, in part because there were people there who worked with me at the old job over 11 years before. So I would say a few things were going into my process, my thought process. My kids were getting older. They were in school. I think it was when my youngest was going into kindergarten that I thought I could actually do something like this. And then every year I would see the people who I used to work with at this annual Christmas party that our old boss used to throw. And every year it used to be like, yeah, I'm home with the kids. Yeah, I'm home with the kids. And then finally in that between year 9 and year 10, so I guess it was the year 10 Christmas party, I went and I said, I'm thinking about maybe going back. And the reaction was so confidence boosting to me because people were more confident in me than I was in myself at that time. And they were like, really? That's great news. Let's have lunch. Let's talk. And so that started making me think about it a little more seriously. And then I also went to my 15-year business school reunion, and I ran into an old classmate of mine who had gone into the executive search business. And I had a very cursory conversation with her, but 9 months later, she sent me an email and she said, I came across something that might be a really good match with your skill set.
What did you do to prepare yourself? I hear you that it was a pleasant surprise that people were eager to have you back, remembered you the way you were as if you had never left, that kind of those doors were open and that eagerness existed. But what did you do to get yourself ready? What did you do to feel confident, to kind of build up your knowledge base having been out for 11 years?
Well, I had to do a lot because remember, I had been out for over 10 years at that point. So I remember going into this whole mode of studying my old business school cases and studying all the old transactions that I used to work on and really trying to immerse myself again in the world of finance. Now, part of this involved resubscribing to the Wall Street Journal. It sounds very basic, but I had, a lot of transition had happened in the financial services industry in the 1990s. So I really had to sit with the Wall Street Journal for a good 6 months and read it cover to cover before I felt like I knew what was going on in the business world again, because, I thought I'd go into some interview and talk about a company that didn't exist anymore because it had gone under or merged or changed names. So all of that was taking place as part of my preparation.
I want to double click on this a little bit because in 2015, you gave a TED Talk, and one of the most fascinating insights that we took away from that was you sharing exactly what you're saying right now, which is when navigating your relaunching of your own career, you realized people's view of you was frozen in time. And then you mentioned that applicants have a responsibility to get up to speed on what they've missed to sort of fulfill that expectation, that memory that people have of us. So how is that an advantage that too many of us overlook? What are people who are trying to relaunch their careers? What are the big missteps that you often see in terms of their expectations on how that journey is going to go for them?
Right. So the biggest misstep that people make is actually a misstep that I made myself.